If you zoom out and look at what people are actually frustrated about with money, it's rarely just "I don't make enough" in the absolute sense. More often, it's this weird feeling that no matter how much more they earn, the pressure never really goes away. They get a raise, upgrade a few things, and a year later, they feel just as tight as before. That usually gets chalked up to inflation or bad luck or this system. And for lower income folks, those excuses hold real weight. But in most cases, particularly for middle and high earners who can actually afford those upgrades, something else is happening quietly in the background. What most people don't realize is that there's a spending threshold built into the math. And once you cross it, progress starts slowing down even if your income keeps going up. So instead of giving you the usual advice like avoid lifestyle inflation or just spend intentionally, I wanted to try something more useful. I ran the numbers to answer a very specific question. How much lifestyle inflation can you actually afford before it starts costing you years of your life? Before touching any math, we need to be very precise about what we're talking about because most people lump very different things together. Lifestyle inflation is not spending money. It's not vacations, it's not a big one-time purchase, it's not enjoying your money. Lifestyle inflation is a permanent increase to your baseline spending. Think things like rent or mortgage that's a little higher, a car payment that didn't exist before, subscriptions that quietly stack up, or convenience upgrades that never roll back. The key word here is permanent. The second a new expense becomes a fixed monthly cost, you permanently raise the minimum income your lifestyle requires. That distinction matters because one-off spending is just a speed bump, and baseline spending moves the finish line. To understand the impact of lifestyle inflation and how much of it you can afford, we need a neutral baseline as the starting point. Here's the setup I'm using. Income is $80K, annual spending is $60K, savings is $20K, so the savings rate is 25%. The target is 25 times spending or $1.5 million, and the long-term real return assumption is 7% per year. With those inputs, the timeline to financial independence lands at about 27 years. Some of you might think a 25% savings rate is way too high, but to be honest, a lot of my regular viewers would consider this to be the bare minimum number everyone should be aiming for. In their world, it is not considered extreme. It is considered very normal. I understand how the average person may think that that sounds crazy, but people like us do things like this. We're okay with looking a little crazy because we're turning our dollars into options and freedom in the future. And once again, all these numbers are just a baseline to show how different types of lifestyle inflation impact everything later in the video. This is where everything clicks. On the horizontal axis, we have monthly lifestyle inflation, which as we said earlier is permanent spending added to the baseline. On the vertical axis, we have years to financial independence. At $0 per month of lifestyle inflation, we of course have our baseline set at 27 years. Now we start moving to the right. Add $200 per month to your baseline spending, and that takes the timeline from about 27 years to 29 years. At $400 per month, you're at about 32 years. At $600 per month, you're at around 34 years. This is where something important happens. The line stops behaving linearly. Instead of an additional upgrade adding a little time, it adds disproportionately more. By the time you reach $800 or $1,000 per month in permanent upgrades, it goes from a small delay to trading years of freedom in the future, because the math compounds against you the same way it compounds for you when you invest. This is the part no one shows you. At this point, the most common objection I always hear is, sure, but this doesn't matter if my income keeps going up. That sounds like something my 9th ex-wife would say, which is why she took 50% of everything and has 0% of it left. Now, all kidding aside, that does sound like a reasonable solution, and it's also where most people go wrong. The reality is that when most people get a raise, they skip right past financial freedom and sprint right toward pushing retirement further away. A huge chunk of that extra paycheck vanishes into nicer housing, newer cars, fancier vacations, better restaurants, endless subscriptions, or whatever weird, freaky stuff you're into. Baseline spending jumps before savings ever gets that real boost. So instead of shortening their time to freedom, the raise just resets everything at a higher, more expensive normal. That's why we all know someone pulling 6 figures who still feels broke and trapped. They'll whine that, oh, if I just made some more money, everything would be okay. And you're sitting there thinking, huh? You can't even handle the money you already have. What the hell do you think more money is gonna solve? They're like cokeheads who think that the solution to their problem is more coke. That's the dirty secret this chart exposes. A higher income can actually make you poorer in the ways that matter the most, because those extra years of work quietly get tacked on to the end of your life. Unfortunately, you don't feel them until it's too late. Isn't it insane to realize that some people would literally be better off never getting another raise? Because every time they do, they just use it as an excuse to upgrade that cage that they're locked in, which is going to extend the sentence that they have to serve before they're free. And once again, they'll sit there and they'll whine and they'll cry and they'll say, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in this cage, the system. And you're looking at them like, dude, you built that cage exactly the way that you wanted. This is what you asked for. We all have an affordability threshold. It's the point where lifestyle inflation stops being harmless and starts being structurally damaging. Below it, and you can still have flexibility. Above it, and your plan becomes more fragile. The tricky part is that the threshold isn't obvious in real life, since no single decision feels big enough to trigger alarm bells. But on the other hand, we also need to know the threshold, since saving for the future is great and all, but it's also great to be able to spend more as our income grows. My weird ass needs to know that the $250 I spend every month to have water shipped to me from the frickin' mountains isn't gonna cause me to have to work longer. So if an affordability threshold exists, the obvious next question is, where is it? Because knowing that a line exists doesn't help much if you don't know how close you are to it. The cleanest way that I've found to answer this is to stop thinking in terms of percentages and start thinking in terms of what you're protecting. And the thing you're protecting is your savings rate. Now, your savings rate is the engine behind everything on the back end. Your compounding, your flexibility, your early retirement, your optionality. And once that engine gets watered down, the whole plan slows down even if your income keeps rising. So instead of asking, how much of a raise can I spend? I flip the question around to something more useful, like what savings rate am I unwilling to drop below no matter how much more money I make? For someone watching this video, my guidelines are 20% is a solid floor. And for a lot of people, it's already pushing the minimum. 25% is strong, 30% and above is aggressive and buys time faster. Now, I think a lot of people do this backwards. They base their savings rate on what's left over after all other expenses, like it's a one-night stand you never plan to talk to again. When you choose that savings rate number and build everything else around it, it becomes non-negotiable. The moment you let lifestyle inflation dictate your savings rate for you, the threshold gets crossed automatically. Once you lock in that savings rate, the rest becomes pretty mechanical and mathematical. Keep in mind that we want to run these numbers based on net income, so after it's been taxed. Gross income doesn't tell you what you can actually spend because you can't spend money you never see. Counting pre-tax dollars is how people convince themselves that they can afford things that they absolutely cannot. So everything from here on out is based on take-home pay. Here's the formula. Maximum spending you can support after a raise is your net income times 1 minus your target savings rate. Then to calculate your affordable lifestyle inflation, you take that maximum spend amount minus current spending. That difference is the amount of permanent lifestyle inflation you can add without sabotaging your future. Let's walk through this using the same baseline we used earlier. Here's the current situation. Net income is $80,000, spending is $60,000, the savings rate is 25%, so the annual investment is $20,000. That's the starting point. Now let's say you get a raise, a new position, or move on to a different employer, and your net income increases by $10,000, bringing you up to $90,000. If you keep your savings rate at 25%, then the new annual investment is $22,500. An increase of $2,500 per year. Now look at the spending side of things. With the same savings rate, the maximum allowed spending is $67,500, which means your math-approved lifestyle inflation is $7,500 per year, or about $625 per month. Now pause here, because this is the part that surprises people who are already good savers. That $10,000 raise resulted in $2,500 per year going toward investing, and up to $7,500 per year available for permanent lifestyle upgrades. So even when you do everything right and hold a strong savings rate, The math allows your lifestyle to grow 3 times faster than your investing. That $5,000 gap is why lifestyle inflation sneaks up on people who otherwise have their shit together. With a savings rate of 25%, your lifestyle is going to balloon every single time you get a raise, since 75% of it is going toward your overall spending. And that becomes the new baseline. And this right here is where the real decisions are going to happen. Just because the math says you can inflate your lifestyle by $625 per month doesn't mean you need to. A lot of people run this exercise and realize they don't even want to use all of it, so they redirect some of that to increase their savings rate. Every dollar you don't lock into baseline spending can push your savings rate higher. It can shorten your timeline. It can create margin for uncertainty, or buy flexibility later. Now listen, let me be clear. I'm not saying you shouldn't increase your lifestyle by that full 75%, because the rule just told you that you can afford to do it. It's your money, and I'm not your daddy, so do what you want. There have been many points in my life where I got a raise, and I looked around, and there wasn't any baseline spending in my life that I wanted to increase, so I just directed all of it into investments. Now, there were also times where I used some of that raise to increase my baseline spending using the exercise we just went through. I think this is all just going to depend on the type of person you are and what you want at that point in time. Life is one big series of choosing between a ton of different trade-offs. There's really no right or wrong answer as long as you're not screwing around with your minimum target savings rate. After that, blow it on, I don't know, freaking Beanie Babies and hookers for all I care. One more reality check to keep in mind that a lot of people miss is that when baseline spending goes up, you need to make sure your emergency fund target goes up with it. Everyone's going to treat their emergency fund just a little bit differently. Some want it to cover 100% of their current spending for however many months, and others want it to cover a small percentage of current monthly expenses since there's more flexibility in their spending if an emergency hits. Just make sure you increase your emergency fund accordingly. I personally use the more flexible approach at this point in time since my monthly expenses could be cut back to 75% if I needed to live off my emergency fund. To understand how your savings rate translates into actual freedom, you'll need to understand the 3 layers of retirement that you need to build before age 50, which you can learn about in this video to your left next. Hit that like button before you go and share the video with someone you think needs to see it. I'll see you in the next one, friends. Done.